Thanks for tuning in to the Marvel Movie Minute.
Want to skip those pesky ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 5 minutes at a time. In this, our 8th season, we're looking at Thor: The Dark World. I'm Matthew Fox.
I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here for the funerary arrows.
And today we are talking about minutes 51 through 55, which begins with said funeral and ends with Thor explaining a battle plan to his father that is long on emotion and short on common sense. But we're going to start with the funeral. Pete, take it away, because you seem to have strong emotions about CGI arrows hitting CGI boats.
No, now look. Sometimes I just know that CGI is designed to make me feel. And there is something about the call to I don't know. You know more about these rites than I do, but the call to like Norse funeral services that I find fundamentally beautiful. And whether it was created by dancing pixels or real flame and boats, I still find myself moved by it. I don't understand when it changes culturally to the Japanese floating lanterns at the end, the energy balls. I don't understand that. This is a real hodgepodge of funeral rites that I'm not sure I'm up on, but I do find it pretty.
So just clearing up a few things, it is not a ritual that has any recorded history among the Norse peoples themselves, including the Vikings. It is, however, recorded in their mythology that this happened. I think there's an instance of it happening in the Eddas. I don't know if it's to a Norse god or just like to people who the Norse gods are interacting with. My searches really only said it has mythological roots.
Okay.
So whether it's created by Norse writers in the 4th, 5th, or 6th centuries, or whether it's created by Hollywood in the 1920s, or I have no idea. But it definitely has mythological roots. They didn't come up with it for this.
But wait a minute. You're seriously, there is no recorded history of any of these actual things happening?
Not that I could find. I mean, I'm sure it may have happened once or twice. But among other things they talked about, same with the idea of burial at sea, boats are too valuable. You're not going to waste a boat. Or something like that. And so even to like Viking chiefs and stuff like that, they might sometimes get buried at sea, but there just isn't like the record of this kind of even buried at sea is going to be, often tossed over the boat, not like
there's like wrapped up
boat.
And dropped. Yeah.
But the idea
That's
of creating burial at sea and cremation, again, I'm not a Norse historian. From the little bit of looking I did, this is not something that has deep roots in Norse history, but it is referenced a lot in Norse mythology. At least as far as I believe it is Norse mythology, not Hollywoodization of Norse mythology, but I'm not exactly positive on that.
So mythological boats are cheaper by the dozen.
Yeah, and mythological arrows always hit.
Always hit, yeah. Okay.
Because as Game of Thrones did explain, if you only have one person trying, granted this one seemed to have a lot of other people with arrows ready, but in Game of Thrones they explored the possibility that you just never hit the boat and then the dead body just floats on down the river and corrupts all the food that you're trying to eat, in the future. So who knows? Right.
Which is a valuable life lesson for those who want to practice this particular bit of mythological funerary. They do it don't they do it in Lord of the Rings too? Isn't that another thing? So all of the examples that I have made headcanon are actually just mythological or completely fiction.
I believe that is the case. Yeah. I believe there's no record of it happening to like Eric the Red or, some other thing like that. But it's possible.
That's very interesting.
Now, let me ask you, what did it do to the moving emotions you had to be reminded that this is kind of a flat Earth situation when the boat falls off the edge of the world?
I think it's really generous of you to put kind of in that sentence. This is a flat Earth situation, and it is worth a chuckle. I had forgotten until just a few minutes ago exactly that point, because I wanted in my head, gravity works. The water goes over, so why doesn't the boat go over? And in fact, it doesn't, and it reminds you that Asgard is once again a mythical place. It might be because I'm cranky today. Matthew,
Yeah.
honestly. I was unmoved, but I came with much more Matthew energy than Pete energy today. I was unmoved largely on the emotional level at the funeral. I was reminded again, I watched the 5 minutes before. I know Frigga died. I like Frigga. I like the actor who plays Frigga. And I found myself totally unmoved. And maybe it's because of exactly this, the boat that goes straight off into space. And to your other point, so many archers. There's one who could hit the boat, and the rest just had no sense of aim whatsoever. It looked chaotic. I laughed at that.
Here, I'm going to embody my best Pete energy. I don't think they missed. My sense is that it was kind of an honor. Like, one of them could have stepped up if Thor had missed. I think it was Thor who fired it. But that if whoever was shooting had missed, one of them could step up. But once they see that it hit, they're all going to fire. But you're right. It looks just like a kind of a weird effect.
It does. It just looks funny.
Let me also just offer another moment of charity for those that perhaps like yourself were moved by this the first time through. I really enjoy talking about the movie in these little segments, but I do think sometimes a little thing is missing because we're watching a funeral a week or two. I think it's in our case, it's 2 weeks because of life that happened after we watched her death, which was 2 weeks or 3 weeks after we had watched her have an important moment with, other people.
Right.
I do think that when you watch this whole movie together, if you have not been overwhelmed by the overwhelming silliness of the movie, it is perfectly possible to have an emotional reaction to the moment when the MCU is yelling and screaming, doing everything it can to evoke an emotional reaction from you. In this case, I think just watching it out of the blue the way we are, it's devoid of any of that.
I think that is an appropriate statement. I think that I'm feeling that at this 5-minute grouping more than I have in the past. I feel like this is, particularly in this slower part of the middle of the movie. I don't think I felt this early on when there was a lot of that sort of pre-drama action where we could just move. It was much more propulsive, and I'm feeling we're now in a part of the movie that feels bogged down. And I do think it's important to note, just in terms of lovers of film, how important every 5 minutes can be in terms of pacing. When we're feeling slowed down in just 5 minutes, when you stack 3 5-minute sequences together that feel slow, it can really slow down a feature.
I think that's really interesting, especially because I kind of wrote down all that happens. This is one of the most active 5 minutes we've had in terms of, I think we go to 6 different locations over the course of these 5 minutes. But because, as you said earlier, it was setting up the drama, now this really feels like moving the chess pieces into place. We're starting to get ready for the big thing. But I want to go back to the funeral and say, I think for me, one of the reasons why it misses so badly is that the moment that I think has the greatest potential to bring out emotions is utterly skipped. And to me, that is Loki finding out. Particularly because, as we talked about just a few weeks ago, Kursk and his people and Malekith were probably going to wreak a lot of havoc no matter what they did.
Right.
But Loki helped them. And Loki particularly sort of indicated to them which way they should go. And therefore, in Loki's head at least, I think it's entirely possible for him to draw a direct line between his own actions and the death of his mother, who was one of the only people in the family who still cared about him. Or at least in a way that he could understand. Now, his ability to self-aggrandize means he may not make that connection, but I want to know what happens in the moment that he figures it out, that he finds out. And the film doesn't show us that. It just shows us the moment where he understands that the funeral is over, at which point we don't get to see the wealth of emotional reaction. We get to see a male figure has learned a sad emotion and he breaks things, which has to be one of the laziest, most boring choices you could make as a way to process what I think is the most emotionally rich moment of the movie that we've had so far.
Right. Emotionally rich adjacent moment, because I think you're right. And I've never thought about that before, that we don't get the moment of realization that she's dead. We only get the moment that the funeral is past. And I And that's a trope that happens in other films. Like, that's a familiar trope to me, that somehow the ceremonial death is more important than the actual moment of death, when really, the three deaths, the physical moment of death, the ceremonial moment of death, and the moment of death that comes when the last person speaks your name, when you are ultimately forgotten, are the three major moments of transformation in the death process. And I think that, missing the first one, frankly, it robs Tom Hiddleston of an incredible moment, of incredible potential. And I find that sad and a bit regrettable.
And even with the moment we get, because maybe he only feels his emotions after the funeral, but even then, his back is to us. We just see him use this energy to break things. And so we're left. Is he upset that his mother's dead? Is he upset that he's in prison and couldn't attend her funeral? Is he upset because he feels some connection? And I don't think
is he upset because he's mad that his dad won't let him out of jail when he feels like he probably could have done something.
And I don't remember if this is true. You have a fondness for the show that I don't, so tell me if I'm wrong. But my memory is that they do explore this a bit in the TV show Loki. That when he's thinking about all the things he's done, and I think he does meet his mother again through some timey shenanigans or something. Oh no, that's Thor in the next movie.
That's Ragnarok, I think, or
But that certainly Loki acknowledges that one of the things he has done that he carries all this regret and sadness about is his actions involving the death of his mother.
Yeah,
and the fact
there
that
is this sort of retributive kind of processing.
And if it was just seeing him do what he did when the Dark Elves appear, that's one thing. But we saw in the beginning of the movie, I think the most emotionally connecting relationship and tension was when his mother, connects to him and tries to sort of show that she still loves him, but she's frustrated and upset at him. And so just to ignore that entirely feels like it just robs the funeral of any of the, movingness it could have.
Yeah, I think that's where I am too.
All right, shall we run down the list of things that then happens? I'm going to give the quick list now, and then we can talk by it one by one.
Yes.
We have the good doctor figuring out the convergence at an old age / mental home. I'm not quite sure what that is. Kursk growls at Malekith. Jane sees red and then gets arrested by Odin. The Warriors 3 explain to Odin that they're all but defenseless. Thor shows up to confront Odin about taking Jane prisoner, and then they have their discussion. So that's a very busy 5 minutes.
You're right.
And in most of those little moments, we just stay with it for 15, 20 seconds. And so it has almost no... So I guess let's start with the good doctor talking about convergence at... Because when last we saw he was getting arrested at Stonehenge, but this looks to me more like a nursing, like an old aging in place kind of place than it does a mental illness facility.
It looks like it looks like, it was one of the Robin Williams awakenings, right? Circa 1960 mental health facility, right? But when we still called them asylums,
right?
It looked very industrial chic, like this was a utility facility, but they gave him a chalkboard. There's a chalkboard built in there. He's in some sort of a facility that looks like a classroom, but he is very clearly still in his head about what is going on with the multiverse.
Well, I only brought the confusion because I think everyone in the shot, including Stan Lee, this is his cameo, it looks significantly older than he does, which is why I was like, is this mental health? Is this aging? But anyway, so he explains the convergence. It still doesn't make any sense, but he can figure out these gravity things that can protect the Earth from the convergence. And there's a little joke that he's trying to explain it, and then you pull back and see he's explaining it to these people who aren't paying any attention.
Do you find that you get something out of his explanation? Does it teach you something about the convergence? It does feel exactly like what it is. I sort of feel like I'm in the audience with Stan Lee. And I should say, I feel like this is probably the weakest of the Stan Lee cameos.
Yes, I agree with that.
Which is why I keep forgetting it until you just said it. Right, Stan Lee is in this. I totally forgotten.
He asks for his shoe back, and why he gave his shoe in the first place, who knows? Especially because he's 3 rows back, 3 tables back or something. But I don't... To me, it confirms... It's like, and to be clear, I love Star Trek, and Star Trek goes full on technobabble.
Absolutely.
But this to me is 100% technobabble. especially because it seems the only relevant real point to this is that he has a way to stop it. And that's the part they give the least explanation to. And so it, to me, is clearly a MacGuffin of the worst kind, where we're not even going to do anything about it. We're just exhibiting it for a line or two here.
It does make me feel a little bit of pity for Selvig's storyline, too, because he is, every time we cut back to him post-Avengers, he is... he's sort of portrayed as a buffoon that nobody trusts. He's a Cassandra character, right? Like, he is cursed with the knowledge of what to do, how to do it, and nobody believes him. And he's never put in the room, or it takes a long time to get him in the room with somebody who will actually believe him. And and so I struggle with that, because the payoff to who Selvig is and who Skarsgård gets to play is such a long runway before there's anything. So he's just the brunt of a lot of jokes about emotional capacity, intellectual capacity for, in my opinion, too long.
I think that's a fair way to say it, especially because starting with the movie that came out immediately before this one, and then continuing for 2 or 3 more movies, we have another character who was also deeply emotionally affected by what happened in the first Avengers movie, but his emotions are taken much more seriously, and that's Tony Stark.
Yes.
Tony Stark, like Selvig, I think, has a kind of PTSD, and so does Stark. And Stark's is taken incredibly seriously, and Selvig's is played for laughs. And it just, I would have much rather seen, like, imagine this scene instead in a police kind of setting, where he is rationally trying to explain this, but the police think that he's nuts and are therefore ignoring him. And you could play that with drama and with a sense of, like, impending doom. Like you said, I hadn't even thought of it, but the Cassandra-ness of it, you could have played it much more emotionally and still thrown in a laugh or two. But, like, I feel like you got that laugh at Stonehenge. We don't need that again.
I have a theory.
It could be demons. Some dancing demons?
No, something isn't right there. Yeah. In the comics, Selvig has no continuity, right? Essentially, the Selvig we have here is entirely the result of the creation in the MCU timeline.
Right.
Tony Stark has a legacy in the comic source material of his interpersonal struggles, his alcoholism, his like, he really struggled as an individual outside of Iron Man. And I think we're seeing some of that. Like, we've manufactured a character strictly for the utility of being a comic foil and moving the sciencey stuff forward. Right. And because it has no roots under its trunk, it is never able to sort of grow to its full flourishing self. Right. And Tony Stark in Iron Man 3 arguably gets that, we get to see his roots.
I think that's a good point, especially because I would say he did start off with more depth to him, which was as Jane's mentor, and as the one who was both sort of encouraging but also holding back her, kind of really going off the outside of the realm of established science into the kind of multiple dimensions kind of science that to the rest of the world seems kooky, but we know is actually correct in this world.
Right.
And here Jane has outgrown that, and she doesn't need him anymore. And yeah, like, I think you could have done, especially because Darcy is now not appeared at all. And she's, I think, like, Darcy, if you want comic relief, go to Darcy. She's so much better at it than Selvig. And not that I think the actors are better, but just the way the characters are written. So yeah, I think if this scene was him and Darcy talking, and he was making real sense, but Darcy was also poking fun at the fact that he's borrowing shoes to do this, like, that could have worked so much better as well.
Sure. In many respects, going back and forth between Darcy's kind of comedy and Selvig's comedy here is a hat on a hat. Like, we already have a character, as you say, for that function. And here, I think his post-Avengers mental health arc, I'll go back to our own trope, was not fully fleshed out in the brand guide.
So then we get a scene of an alien ship either firing a laser at a planet or drawing some energy from a planet. And then Kursk growls to Malekith in Dark Elvian, whatever that language is called, basically saying, you have to rest and, heal. And of course he doesn't. At least I don't think we do, but we've no real sense of how time is passing, because later in this 5 minutes, we'll see them attacking Earth. Did that moment add for anything to you for your understanding of this movie?
No. No, I don't understand why we had that cutaway. I already knew Malekith was injured. What was the ship doing that was drilling somewhere? Energy drill.
No clue. Especially because it's clearly not the shape of the ship that invades Earth.
No.
So I don't, somebody needs to show me, like, what are the battleships? What are the destroyers? What are the, like, different parts of the Dark Elf Imperial Navy here?
Yeah. I was not able to figure that out.
We get that, and then we get a moment of reminding ourselves that I guess the ether is within Jane, but also Jane is within the ether, and she gets this moment where she's sort of seeing her own reality all tinged in red, but then a different reality, and then she's pulled out of it by Odin's guards who've come to arrest her / take her into protective custody or whatever they're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like, hey, remember, she has the ether inside her, but nothing else.
In case she ever forgot, right? This is one of those where somebody found a fantastic particulate effect and they needed it in red in the sky. It is cool. There are some cool things they do with the fluid effects in the clouds as it sort of takes over the atmosphere and turns everything red. I think visually it's fun, but I'm with you. The Ouroboros sort of mentality of having her in the ether and the ether in her is, I think, it is endemic of exactly what the trouble is with this movie, that it doesn't, it gets bogged down in its own mythology so quickly that it becomes a showstopper. Like here we are. I think we've had a few episodes now that have been largely pretty good, right? They've been actiony. We have complaints and quibbles, all that, but here, it's just one after another. They almost increase the pace, taking us to, as you say, 6 locations, and yet it feels so slow. And it's because every change is another unexplained thing that I'm not finished with by the time they cut to something else.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to describe it. Also, for those who don't speak fancy words, Ouroboros is the snake eating itself.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Let's talk about the one other scene in this 5 minutes where we get like more than 2 lines of dialogue, which is Odin is being talked to by the Warriors 3, and he's being talked to by the pretty blonde swashbuckler one, whose name I can never remember. And they're explaining that because these guys can be invisible and they can not even Helmsworth, no, Hadgard, not Hagrid. We're not doing well with names today, because the guy who should have played Bond.
We got to get this one right. We know this one inside and out because he's Heimdall, and the actor is Idris Elba.
Thank you.
Oh, God, you just got to get it all out.
I would not have forgotten. Famously of The Wire and many, many other things. But yeah, so even he can't see these ships, and he explains to Odin that they are all but defenseless. At which point Thor shows up and wants to talk about Jane. So we have one important conversation about the potential defenses of Asgard that is raised and then completely swept away because we're going to talk about Jane. Help me to understand what happens next, because I see this set up as, I'm like, oh, wait, there could be an ethical discussion. I like these, where the discussion is basically kind of do you sacrifice Jane, or at least stop protecting Jane, send her away from Asgard so that Malekith and the Dark Elves don't want to attack Asgard? But instead it goes in a kind of about like basically like, just should Odin have like, or on the flip side, like what I guess more really is should they limit Jane's freedoms in order to protect Jane, more importantly to protect the ether and keep it away from Malekith? And Thor is on the one hand mad that they want to do this to Jane, but but then he says that his concern is that it will draw Malekith and the Dark Elves back to Asgard to cause confusion.
Yes.
So he's mad Odin wants to lock her up and instead wants to use her as bait.
Yes.
Because he wants to take her to the Dark World. And then at the moment when the ether is removed from Jane, in her words, the ether will be vulnerable. And to be very, very clear, he does not in any way indicate that Malekith will be any more or less vulnerable.
That is fairly clear. It will be vulnerable, and I will destroy it.
And destroy it and him.
Yep.
So presumably there's no reason why like all of Asgard fighting against Malekith, but on a different location, would be just as effective. Or you can bring all of them to the Dark World. But also, the only thing protecting Jane at this point is the ether. So it feels to me like, yes, Thor, maybe you have a cataclysmic battle, you destroy the ether, you destroy Malekith, and with suddenly defenseless Jane there, that sounds like collateral damage to me. I don't understand his plan in the slightest.
Well, and I will, I'll take that bait, because I think your natural bias, given your other podcasts, is to look for the ethical conversation that this movie was not interested in having.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
no,
I
think I said that. I think I said I started with that, but it seems like, no, it's not. He is not. He's upset that they took Jane prisoner or whatever,
yes.
But then he just wants to, and so put aside even the ethics of using Jane as bait. Why does it, we already saw that Malekith can be hurt by Thor's lightning. So if the choice is just of, I don't want the battle to be on home turf, I want it to be on their turf so that more Asgardians don't die, because he says I want to protect our people, why does it have to be just him? Why can't they kill Malekith and then in a totally different time and place draw the ether out of Jane and destroy it?
This is one of those questions where I don't think you can answer it strictly from a Watsonian perspective, right? So this is Watsonian versus Doyleism. Again, are we approaching it from the author's perspective, Arthur Conan Doyle, or from the character, Dr. Watson? And from a Watsonian perspective, that's a very good question. Like, we would look at the forces we have available to us and say, why is it just him? From a Doyleist perspective, this is a Thor movie, and we have to move that chess piece into prime position. And nowhere is it more apparent the strings that are being pulled here from the studio and the writers than when it stops us to think, you're making an insane decision. You're making a heroism decision for your sake, for the sake of the movies to come. And just counting on the energy and the action being high enough that we won't think about it. And I think on first viewing, you might be able to get away with that. But this is one of the things that ages the movie poorly, is that it gives you too much of an opportunity to think about it.
Well, here's a radical thought that I'm going to suggest to future writers and directors. If you don't want the audience to stop and think about the question, don't have the characters stop and think about the question.
Yeah.
Like, if that's what they wanted, all you had to do was have, that discussion with Odin about how we can't do anything. And then Thor comes along and says, no, my lightning wounded him. We can beat him. We have to take the battle to the Dark World, and I will destroy him. And then it all works.
Because I'm a damned hero. That's what I do.
Then you still get. So I think you're right. I think that, to me, the lesson is the Doyle and the Watson reasons have to line up.
Yes.
The writer has to convince me that what the writer wants to do makes sense for the characters. And they just did that badly.
Well, this is one of those examples where I don't even think the writer could convince the characters, right?
Yeah.
If we sort of anthropomorphize the characters, I kind of don't feel like anybody in this room, Lady Sith, all the Warriors 3, I don't think they believe it. I think they're just trying to get to the end of the scene, just like we are.
Harrison Ford was in the Brave New World movie. I haven't seen it, but I know he becomes a version of Hulk, the Red Hulk or whatever, taking over a role from an actor who I believe passed away. But like the actor was asked, how do you deal with, playing this character who doesn't really make a lot of sense? And he said, and this is on YouTube, you can see it, there's a lot of zeros on the check.
Yeah.
I think what he said is, that's what the money is for. The money
that's what the money is for.
And I think that's probably what most of these actors are thinking. Is like, all right, well, I'm going to hopefully go off and have a better career other places. But
wasn't that similar to Harrison Ford's reaction to Star Wars? Like, I think it's there's a scene where Luke says something and he stops, and now I've forgotten. We're terrible with names today.
I think I know the story you're talking about.
Go ahead.
It's a YouTube video where Luke is basically explaining that like his hair gets all, in his words, schmutzy and should have, and then a scene later should still be dirty, but it isn't for some reason. And Harrison Ford says, "Kid, it's not that kind of movie. If it was that kind of movie, we'd all be in trouble." You know, and oh my God, I'm terrible with it. Mark Hamill in this video does a fantastic impersonation of Harrison Ford.
One of the best. Yeah, that's the I think Harrison Ford understands the assignment. Yeah. Right? Harrison Ford understands the assignment.
I think that's right.
So I think, and that's where that's it. This last minute, right? I mean, where do we don't cut away to a seventh location from here?
No, Thor is in the midst of explaining. Again, basically, it's that moment where someone makes a point at the business table and everyone ignores them, and someone else makes it and they pay attention. Thor's explaining again. They could be overhead right now, and no one would know it.
Here's one more thing, because this last sequence takes place in the throne room, and if we remember to the minute to the set of minutes past, when Malekith walks through the throne room, he throws one of his black hole grenades at the throne, and I wanted to ask you if you felt anything about the symbolic destruction of the throne as we're staring at it missing over Thor's shoulder. It feels to me intentional. Did it feel anything to you?
Didn't notice.
I just want to throw that in as a question that I have about production design, because so much of Asgard is either straight lines or big round curves, circles and stuff. And one of the problems that I have with the throne is that the throne itself looked round.
Yeah. And
when the throne is taken away, there's still a big round shell. And so visually, I don't naturally distinguish between when the throne was there and when the throne was gone. And I think that's a problem, because it's another opportunity for emotion, to feel like the center to the seat of power of Asgard was torn asunder. And I've already forgotten it happened.
And I would say the fact that I watched the throne be destroyed a week ago doesn't speak to it in the movie itself, because maybe that's just why I forgot.
Right.
But I will say that they didn't do enough to remind me that this is a room where there should be a throne. But also, I believe, if I remember correctly, because I was taking a lot of notes and stuff like that, when I watched the whole movie at the beginning of this project, you and I did, I really was watching it a few minutes later, and I did not have any reaction, because I don't think I noticed or took note of the fact that this is a room that the throne should be in, and right now it's not.
Yeah, I think that's a splinter. I think that's something to notice.
I will say also that while I was watching these 5 minutes, I clicked on the wrong thing somehow. I had a baby in my arms to give myself some defense, but somehow I jumped ahead a while and then had to jump back, but I misremembered that I'd done that. And so I thought that there's a later scene we're going to get where a very different kind of spaceship crashes into Earth and Malekith comes out. And I think when I was talking about the he has to be healed scene and the spaceship, I referenced that much further away scene. And people are probably very confused. It's because I'm realizing I just got confused there for a second. None of that happens within these 5 minutes. That happens much later in the movie.
We just know he needs to be healed because he just got his face blown off by lightning. So exactly. Right. So that's where we have it.
Yeah.
This was I'm gonna say it. This was a week where if we're keeping score, this one goes to Team Matthew.
I will not happily, but I will accept that victory.
Yeah,
and look forward to the good minutes that we're going to get when we do another movie.
Are they in this movie? Oof.
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. All right. Thanks, everybody. Please check out, please subscribe if you haven't. You can get ad-free content to this podcast. And of course, you can join any of the other great podcasts that either myself or Pete or any of the other lesser hosts that make up the True Story FM family of podcasts are. We got talk about Mandy making herself a nerd. I talk about Star Wars and ethical questions. We have discussion of ADHD and a parenthood podcast that's going to come across soon by 3 wacky people who want to do that. We have the next reel that Pete and Andy do that talk about other stuff at the cinema. All kinds of things you want. Find all those podcasts. Like, subscribe, write over, put us in your whales, do all those good things. On behalf of myself and Pete, thank you so much. Thor 2 sucks.